Okay. So, Shabana, thanks for coming in. It's really good of you. Do you want to just, while I'm fiddling with the screen, just give us a little bit of insight into what you've been doing with UK parents in the last few weeks?
Yeah, so I got in touch with Natalie Gamble from NGA Law to find out what the situation was with intended parents that were British with their babies being born. I had been contacted by one of the couples who surprisingly told me they would due a baby in a week's time. And then came the issue of how we're going to get these babies out and get them out safely. I also knew a couple that had just had twins and they were British and friends of mine, and they got stuck right in the center of everything, all the trouble. They were due to get their birth certificate the day the first bombs hit. And then it was a case of helping my friends and what I could do, pushing the HMPO, pushing the British Embassy, kind of advising them on what they could do. And it just kind of picked up momentum from there, because now there's a group of 27 British families that we know of. There's probably more. And they're all at some point going to need to get their babies out. But unfortunately, the situation is going from bad to worse. So it's about a matter of figuring out, how do we get these babies out safely?
Yeah, yeah. And look, we have got up about 13, 14 different nationalities who are in touch with us. We have a list of around 80 intending parent families who have got pregnant surrogates in Ukraine or have had births take place. So we are working through those on a case-by-case basis. As I've mentioned before, the ones where surrogates are in Lviv right now or in safer areas are less priority for us. Some surrogates, I'm just hearing from people in the forum here now, are saying their surrogates have agreed to look after their baby after the birth until the parent can get there. That is a rarer occurrence. Most surrogates cannot be expected to do that and won't do that. So if you've got one who will, then that's terrific. In terms of how many surrogates are in Ukraine, I've been questions about that. You know, there are at least 800 surrogates carrying babies for foreigners in Ukraine right now, probably a lot more. Look, I'm just going to run through a few issues around evacuating newborns because it's highly complicated. Just let me share a screen with you again, and we'll see how we go with this one. So the situation is you can't get to the birth. There will be no birth certificate for most of you naming you as the parents, because the birth certificate offices in Ukraine are mostly closed. This may not be the case in Lviv. If the birth is in Lviv, you may be able to get a birth certificate there. In most cases, you won't be able to get an emergency travel document or an emergency passport because most embassies have pulled out of Ukraine entirely. I think, Shabana, the UK is still in Lviv as an embassy, aren't they?
Yes, they are. But I heard today that you can actually get digital emergency travel documents sent over, so people don't physically need to go anywhere to collect them. Great. Which is great.
And that's for the UK parents, is it?
That is for the UK, yeah. Issued by the UK embassy.
Okay. And look, I assume some other countries like the USA are going to be doing the same sort of thing, which would make the process a lot easier for exit. Because currently the requirements for exit without these kind of documents are complex. You need a safe route out via the west or the south. You need a secure vehicle, which means a female driver or a male aged over 60. Anybody approaching the border who's between 18 and 60-year-olds as a male is at risk of being shot. You need a nanny with a power of attorney to care for your child. That's really important. And that's the one we are struggling to get. You need documentation from your surrogate, from the hospital, and from your agency. You need one parent to cross into Ukraine by vehicle to meet your child and pay the driver often. That can be either via a security team controlled convoy, which we try to organise, or private drivers. The Ukraine authorities are not letting babies out of Ukraine mostly if they're unaccompanied by a parent. So you need to come across the border to do that, particularly given the child hasn't got a passport yet. So for those, there's two situations here. For those of you who have infants born in Kiev, for example, you need to start getting documentation ready now, even if your child's not been born yet, because there's a number of issues we're going to have, well, you'll need, because you probably won't be able to get to Kiev. If we can get you an electronic passport without you even being there, then that's great. But you'll need to make sure you have the signed agreement with your agency, the signed contract with your surrogate. That's the one in Ukrainian. The one in with your agency is one in your own language. An ultrasound scan of your fetus. And prior to the birth, you need to provide us with the birth hospital name and address, the hospital contact person, its name and phone number. The hospital birth record is an essential document which we need. In the absence of a birth certificate, we must have this document. We must have the surrogate mother's statement by a letter or by a WhatsApp video in Ukrainian. I'll talk about what that's going to say in a minute. Prior to one of our nannies picking up the baby, there needs to be an agreement that that nanny's got a power of attorney and she can collect and transport the babies. That's got to be in writing. A photo of the child, the baby location at pickup, and the contact person at pickup. So that's really important. So the agencies will have to arrange some of these things. We won't be able to do some of these things, but we are working with agencies to do that. But you'll have to try and arrange as much as we can. We're not there. We haven't got the resources to do everything. This is your responsibility to get these documents. In terms of if we're having a nanny take your baby out to the border, she's got to write something saying that she's carried, well, sorry, this is the statement for the surrogate. So the surrogate's got to say that she's delivered a child who was born on such and such a date, she's giving up her parental rights, she hasn't been forced, it's a free will, the parents are so-and-so, and I've no objection to the child travelling to this destination. This is required because there won't be a birth certificate listing you as the parents on it. You'll have instead a surrogacy contract. So this has been a sort of an interim measure we've had to use to get these children out in the absence of proper documentation. So we have had 5, 6 cases that we've helped look after where this process has worked okay. It's not easy though. There will be difficulties at the border crossings. For those of you who are going to have births, and we'll hear a bit from one of our parents about that soon, I think. For those of you who've got infants near the Ukraine border, you will go to the birth hospital in Ukraine for the birth. So it's going to be easier. Again, you've got to get the same documents though, or less of them. You're going to have to make sure you have a photo of the child, a letter confirming the genetic link signed by the medical director. But it will be a bit easier because you'll be there to do more paperwork. And that's why some clinics, as you'll see in a minute, have gone to an effort to get birth hospitals near the borders. Travelling into Ukraine with a child is currently complicated. Ukraine border officials are not allowing foreigners into Ukraine from Poland, for example, on foot. You need to come with a private car or in a bus. Polish taxi drivers will not cross the border into Ukraine, and the foreign rental companies are not allowing their vehicles into Ukraine. So if you're traveling in by car, you've got to hitch a ride. This is difficult. And we have had a number of parents stuck for hours trying to do this. It's not an ideal situation. We're hoping that other borders are going to be better, but the Polish border is really hard right now. I'm now going to see if we can get Amit in so we can talk to him about the process. And I'll ask the questions too. Will growing families obtain paperwork for Biotexcom? Yes, we will. We're doing that with Biotexcom now. The ultrasound scan of the fetus. On the ultrasound scan, we want to make sure that we can see details of the surrogate's name on there. The document can be digital, and in fact, all the documents that you provide can be digital, although we will need to have hard copies that you bring across the border, or copies on a laptop that you can show. There's a question about, is Lviv issuing birth certificates at the moment? We think the birth certificate office in Lviv is open. The last communication I had was that that is the case, but we haven't had anybody actually use that process yet.
Sam, can I just say something on that part?
Yeah,
Sorry
sure.
to interrupt you.
No, great.
So just for the nationalities that actually definitely need a registered birth, I believe a lot of you may know Olga Dijenko, who's a surrogacy lawyer over in Ukraine. One of her colleagues is offering this service now to be able to go to the ministry and register the birth for those that actually definitely need it. I know in the UK we don't, but then again, I know some other nationalities do. So for those that are going to be stuck without it, there is someone there to help.
That's great. That's great. So what you're saying is she can arrange the those kind of documents, right? Do you know how long that will take?
I have no idea, but they have put the word out. So one of our colleagues is going to be helping intended parents that need that. When their babies are born, they can help you out and get you the documents.
Okay. All right, that's great. Let me, Sophie's here too. I might just introduce you to Sophie, who's on the call as well. Sophie, can you introduce yourself as well? So Sophie's been helping look after our intending parents, particularly from France, which has been great. Hi, Sophie. Thanks for coming in. Look, so Sophie was involved in a very recent evacuation. I was talking about before of a I think it was a French baby, wasn't it, Sophie? We had a private vehicle across one of the border crossings. We have we are making people aware now that border crossing is not advisable to use again. We are shifting to another border crossing for people. So I will provide some information on that. There's one further south. Sophie, do you remember the name of the border crossing that couple used?
I think it was Luzin, Luzin.
Yeah, that's right. The border crossing that Amit used, which he's going to talk about in a second, it does seem more reliable. Amit, can you remember the name of what was the border crossing you used to get across?
It was Rawaruska. The town on the other side on the Poland border was Rawaruska. I exactly don't know the Polish side. It was a very let me check one sec.
Yeah, no, you're right. It was. Just while Amit's checking, let me introduce him to you. Amit's in Warsaw now. He and his wife had a baby born in Kiev. Their agency were kind enough to drive their newborn close to the Polish border, and Amit and his wife did travel across the border. I think it was a mixture of you got a bus, didn't you, Amit, to come across the border?
Sorry, Sam, come again, please. I was just looking
I think you got a bus across the border, didn't you, into Poland?
Yeah, I mean, like it was. I mean, yeah, we took a bus basically because when we were there, when we were trying to cross it, only private vehicles and some Ukrainian buses were allowed. You can't just take a taxi and drive over. No Polish, or that was my experience. At least in that border, the taxi driver from Poland will just drop you just beside the border, and then he will just tell you to, hitchhike or take a private vehicle, like by hitchhiking or in our case, we could just get a bus because when we tried to hitchhike, it wasn't really possible. There were like very few cars and they weren't really interested in, taking anyone. It wasn't just us. It was like a lot of Ukrainian people over there. And I'm talking in the initial days. So really now, I don't know what is the situation now, but what I heard is like they're not even allowing non-Ukrainians to cross into Ukraine anymore.
Yeah, look, we are having a trouble with that. I think, Sophie, we had a real issue with that last night, didn't we, with that French couple who weren't allowed across the border.
Yeah, I'm not sure really, to be honest, why they would ask him to. They would ask them to cross only by car. So first of all, they would not allow them the French IPs in Poland at all, in the Ukraine at all. Sorry, I'm very tired. And after a few hours, the nanny managed to cross the border from Ukraine to Poland, meet the parents, talk to the guards, and from there, they said that they allowed them if they would take their car. But it was a rental; they were not covered to get in, so they had to find their own car. And as you said, they've kind of hitchhiked and ask anybody to get in their car to get into Ukraine, and the dad and the nanny managed to get back in to grab the babies and the kids.
Right, right. Amit, can you tell us, how did you find a bus ride to take you over the border?
Look, the driver was reluctant to take us, first of all, like he was looking at first thing, if anybody has been to Ukraine, at least, like from my experience, I've been to that small border town. Language is a big barrier. Nobody means like maybe there'll be few people who can speak in English, but most I will say mostly they will only speak Ukrainian. So for us to convince the driver was a problem because he wasn't interested in taking foreigners in. And then we had to like Google Translate, and luckily I had that app, and I did convince him saying that I have a baby to, pick up and all those sort of things. And then he was asking a few questions about insurance. You need to have insurance, you need to have PCR tests, you need to have like proper, documentation and those sort of things. But eventually he agreed. So yeah, that was like first day, I'm just talking initial days of the war. Okay. So I'm not sure what the situation will be like now, So yeah. It wasn't like, you could just go in, and we was kind of lucky, we just managed to cross, that's what I will say.
Can you tell us a bit more about the transport? So you eventually, I know it took a long time for your agency to come with the baby. Once you did have the baby,
yeah.
How close to the border were you able to come before you had to make your own way?
Look, there were like, going to Ukraine was a bit easy. Coming out obviously is I will say not really a nightmare, but sort of very, very hard task, okay? Because there were literally thousands. When I'm saying thousand, I mean thousands of people who were like queuing up to get out, and mostly women and children. They were not allowing men of the age of 18 to 60. So our agency guy, Alex, he had our baby, and he could just drop. He was like very resourceful. He did manage to speak to a few of these Ukrainian military guards who were there, and he did help us in crossing, a bit more, but he could go, I don't know, maybe like 7-8 kilometers before border, or 10 kilometers, something like that. I'm not sure exactly, but they won't allow men beyond that. Only women and children can go. If you're Ukrainian. Yes, we were not Ukrainian, so we could go. But then he had to like drop us, and we literally walked to the border, and then with the baby, and then as I told you, I had to convince the security guards over there. I think they were all Ukrainian military. They were not like normal immigration officials. So I had to convince them. I have a baby which is just 5-day-old, and somehow I managed to get our son in a private car. He helped us, no doubt at that time. But then again, we were lucky, and the guy was willing to listen to us. So it's just by chance. It doesn't mean that it's a rule. It could be very well an exception. Okay. I'm not sure.
How were you able to communicate with the Ukrainian official? Do they speak any English?
They speak. Look, they very little English, but they do understand. If you show your passport and everything, they do understand you're a foreigner and you're trying to get out. And then I had a baby with me, so they understood what I'm trying to say, like the overall situation, and I didn't have to Google Translate. They understand a little bit of English, but again, it depends. When we actually formally crossed, when we went further up to the actual immigration, there the Ukrainian immigration, they were, again, I don't know, they were wearing military uniform. I'm not sure if they're custom or they were military or whosoever, but they do speak English at that time, you should be okay then. But again, what I'm talking about is there is actual border where you have custom and immigration, like an airport where you have offices and everything. But then before that, there were a lot of checkpoints, there were a lot of military, and there were people, volunteers and everyone. And you just can't just, walk anywhere you want, they will stop you at every place.
Yeah,
I'm talking about, I'm talking about like, sorry, go ahead, Sam.
Are we talking about 3 or 4 different checkpoints? How many checkpoints are there?
Yes, it's not exactly checkpoint. They were like people from Ukrainian military. They were like in like cars or standing in groups of 2 or 3, and they were like, checking anyone going there, So in our case, what happened was, Alex drove us on the wrong side till he could, and he tried to explain the military guys over there, and we could go like few kilometers on the road, and then he dropped us there, and then he told us you can actually walk all the way wherever you can, and then on the other side, like we were supposed to go on foot, and cross it. And we didn't really know what we were doing, honestly, at that time. And then we have to go onto the other side, which was the actual queues of cars and everything. And then we were like standing there in the night and, trying to cross over. That's what it was.
Okay. What if people are having to do this journey, what should they take with them?
Honestly, look, again, where are you going? When I look, it was a spontaneous decision, Sam, when we did it, okay? It wasn't like we planned for it and everything, because Alex was saying that we have the baby, you have to come over, and the nanny and us can't, they can't take care of the baby forever. And we just made that decision spontaneously. We got the taxi driver and everything. So we didn't really plan it well, okay? So when we went to Ravaruska, that town, at that time, when we reached at 4 o'clock-ish, there was literally nothing, just a couple of kiosks, no hotel, no taxi, no nothing. Okay, so I will say, just if you really are allowed to go, first of all, then you need to be prepared for every eventuality.
Okay.
I'm not trying to scare anyone, but that's what my experience was, and it wasn't really, I wasn't scared or anything. There's nothing, like people are behaving very nicely. They are volunteers and everything. They were like trying to help you and all, but it's a war scenario. Okay? It's a war situation. People are, it may not be a normal thing, like what they are doing, so I don't know, what to say, but what we saw rather, there was hardly a kiosk and no restaurant, nothing. So pack some nuts and everything. I will say even have a sleeping bag, because there was nothing. We were like freezing in the cold that day, okay, whole night.
Yeah.
So have as warm clothes as you can, water, just survival mode. You have to think that how you're gonna survive over there. That's my experience. That's it.
Yeah.
If I can jump in, the French parents who crossed yesterday, they spent basically all night long in the outside, because it took all night for them to get out with the baby. And so I was talking to them all the way through, and apparently what they would need to bring for them, but also for the nanny and the babies, is at least a pram or something to put the baby in if they have to, if they stand outside, and to carry the baby carrier as well, milk formula for the baby, nappies, because sometimes the nanny, when they get the babies from hospital or from the place the baby was at, they don't have enough formula or nappies and things like that for the babies. But also nannies usually come out with their own kids, and in that case last night the kids were starving. They couldn't take enough food with them for the trip, so they had to bring pizzas or whatever they could find in Poland to bring over the border. So I would say food, water, warm clothes, warm blankets for the people waiting there, and I don't know, just stupid thing, but an umbrella if it starts raining. Or
And how cold was it?
Look, for us, we felt it was really cold because we just came in a day before, and the temperature, how it was there. And
what was the temperature?
I would say in the daytime it's okay, but when the night sets in, especially when it goes over 10 o'clock-ish, 11, 12, 1 o'clock-ish, it goes to negative. Okay. And I think I didn't measure it, but we were literally freezing. My wife wasn't keeping well, and I was very worried for her. I was okay, but my wife wasn't. So it was really cold. -2, -4 could be anything. Okay. And it felt very cold because it was windy. Okay. More than the cold, it was the wind, which really kills you. Again, it depends, who's coming from which country. Okay. If you're from a cold country like France or European countries and all, you may be better, equipped to handle that. But like we are coming from a tropical country. Okay. At least in my experience. And then especially you're coming from summer, then it will be hard. Okay. It will not be that easy. I can say that. You have to be careful if you're standing outside, and because there was nothing. Okay. There's no taxis, nothing. Nobody was willing to even, if you pay them like even 500 euros, there's no one to help you with that 500 euros. It's useless. That's what I'm just trying to say at that time.
How do you feed the baby while you're walking across the border?
They gave us a formula and everything. The agency, they had few things with us. with them for the baby, the blanket and everything. But luckily, when we were crossing over and they knew that, there was in the border, only in the border, there was a petrol station. Okay, there was a gas station. And so I walked to the gas station and we have brought some stuff from, when we were going to Poland, like all this hummus and other stuff. So I went there and I got a hot water from there. So yeah, it's regularly, the gas station in the border was okay, in the border crossing. So I could get the hot water and then we fed the baby there while we were trying to cross.
I've had a question come in. Do you recommend a baby carrier or a pushchair to cross the border?
Stroller? Yeah, baby carrier won't. Yeah, again, I don't know. Like, the problem is that if you have a baby carrier or a pram or whatever you want to say, in our case, we just crossed in someone's car. They helped us. The Ukrainian military asked a private vehicle. A lady was kind enough to give us her, seat to me, my wife and baby. And she had a lot of stuff and other things, and we didn't have that much luggage, or like I would say one bag, a couple of bags rather.
Yep.
But if you have a baby stroller and everything, I'm not sure, like.
Yeah. I don't think a stroller. I think a baby carrier like a
I'm not too sure, I don't know. You can imagine what I'm trying to say. Okay, everybody's smart enough to.
Yeah.
It's not a normal situation.
Look,
I'm just saying that a baby carrier, usually the baby the agency gave us the baby in a massive baby wrap sort of stuff.
Yeah,
they need that. They need that to survive the cold, right? And you can't put a baby in a baby carrier in that thing. So it might, if you put it in the carrier, it might be cold, so it might not be a great idea. And because there is a lot of walking, from what I understood from Amit and from yesterday, there's a lot of walking. I would suggest a tiny pram where the baby could lie down, because it was a pain for the nanny to have to, in a way, I'm saying pain, but to have to carry the baby plus her bag plus her own kids. And
Look, I've had Fiona from the UK has come in to say her surrogate has just crossed the border, and her tips are for her surrogate to make sure she avoided the queues, to say very loudly to the officials that she's very pregnant and needs special help, to avoid the long queues and find as many volunteers to help her as possible. So you can tell your surrogates about that. We did get one surrogate across on an evacuation train to Warsaw. We'll talk about that in a minute. Okay. Look, I thank you so much. That's great for your help. I'm really, really pleased to hear from you, Amit. That was really, really useful.
Sam, can I just say something before we sign off? For all nationalities, like all the different countries that intended parents are coming from, everyone should contact their embassies and their own government to see what support they provide, because foreign men between the age of 18 and 60 are being stopped. They're just shouting women and children at these border crossings, and they're pushing the men back, even if they're the intended fathers and the foreigners. What we've seen in some cases is if you're coming from a country that is supporting you and the embassy are very supportive of the consulate, you can ring them up. They will speak to the border guards and then they'll pull you forward. I know the UK aren't doing it yet. We're hoping they will. But some of the other countries, they do it.
That's right. We have found that Canada and the USA have got good systems in place, and we can send you resources for Canada and the USA because they're highly organised here. But it's very important that you have contact with your embassy. They know you're crossing with a child, because it is more than likely that you'll need their help at the border crossing. We're not finished yet.
And also with the babies as well, when you're in the queue, I'm not saying it's guaranteed, but my friends that crossed with the twins, this was, mind you, a week ago, they just showed everyone in front of them, look, we've got babies, they're going to freeze. And people just generally let them go to the front. Now, the situation is a lot more desperate and people are queuing overnight, so they might not be willing to do that, but they got really lucky. It's definitely worth trying, especially because anyone coming out now, their babies are going to be really tiny and it's so cold out there.
Yep.
And if I can just add up something as well regarding the embassy, the couple whose baby is about to be born today, French, they call there is a special number for the French embassy at the moment, like a crisis cell or whatever you want to call it, I'm not sure. in Warsaw, and they're all responding to the front pretty much all the time. If we give them a little bit of notice, maybe 24, 48 hours, with all the documents of the kids and the parents and the checkpoint where they will cross, they will talk to the border guards and help them out. I've just heard about it yesterday.
Thank you. That's great. Olga, let's come on the chat about Olga. Olga's one of the lawyers we work with in Ukraine. Shabana, what's Olga's surname? Can you remember?
It's Danchenko.
That's Zenchenko. Yeah, it's a surname.
Yeah.
And there's another lawyer I can see there in Poland. Look, we're now going to talk about 3 more topics, and I'm going to bring in one more speaker as well. We're going to look at births in Ukraine, first of all. I'm just going to share a screen with you about that one. So for those of you who are going to be having births in Ukraine, those at Chernovitsky, that's only 30 kilometers from the Moldova border. And the issue is here, the surrogates will be evacuated. Some of them have already gone to Moldova, some of the surrogates from the Odessa region. And the idea is they'll return into Ukraine to Chernovitsky for the birth. The reasoning here is the fact that then means that if and when a birth certificate is issued, both parents would go on that birth certificate. And so I think New Hope has done that for their clients. Lotus has done a similar arrangement in terms of coming up with an arrangement with this hospital near the Slovak border, which is really only 9 minutes away. So you can come across there, hopefully be there for the birth, and come back across the border with the documents you have. There is some evidence that we may be able to get some digital emergency travel documents in the coming weeks when some governments get their act together on that. I now need to introduce you to one of our other team members. Let me just bring her in here now. Kasia, who's a Polish national and working with us on the Polish issues. Hi, Kasia. Thanks for coming in at such short notice. That's really good of you. No problem. So Kasia has a background in healthcare, and she's been working with us to come up with arrangements in Polish hospitals for births, for those of you who are looking to have births there. We're going to talk about the legals of that in a minute too. Kasia's been great at finding information out and doing some deals with hospitals in Ukraine. So the first one is one called Lubinawa Hospital in Katowice in Poland. So it's not far from the Ukraine border, only about 4 hours, I think, by drive. These are all private hospitals. The team there, the management team, are surrogate friendly, and it is closer to Ukraine than the Warsaw ones. And they have sort of fairly well priced birth programs. The other one is Medicover in Warsaw, which is one of 3. And I'm providing some details here for you. For these hospitals, you need to book face-to-face specialist consults with the surrogate. And to register that surrogate, they need a passport number, contact number, name and address, and they can provide a natural C-section delivery. And Katia can help you with those appointments. You know, she can make those appointments for you if you need, or you can do those yourselves with your surrogate. They offer sort of 3 different packages, if you like: a vaginal birth package for around $2,000 US, or a cesarean birth package for $2,800 US. And that one is gives you sort of more things in it, as you can see there. And then there's a prestige package for $4,500 US, which gives you a choice of doctor and a 2-room suite, so you could stay in the hospital with your surrogate. You can have extended stay there, and there's a lot more care for your surrogate while she's in Warsaw in terms of pre-birth and post-birth as well. So the first hospital I talked about has 2 of those 3 packages at least. So they're probably worth looking at. Cardi has also found, I think, I'm just going to come back to Cassia now. Cassia, there's another hospital I know you looked at last night. Where was that one?
So this one is a little bit further up north. It's in Białystok, and this is not a hospital, it's like a private clinic. And whatever I've been speaking with actually with all of those hospitals, and obviously as we spoke before, the surrogacy is a bit sensitive case in Poland. Each of the health member informed me that actually in that case, they're not interested about the background of the mother or of surrogacy. The only interest in their hands is basically the health of the mother and the baby. So they'll book them as a normal mother and a baby in any of those private hospitals. And then obviously the other concerns which will come up next is birth certificate. One of the actually clinics advised me, which was very good advice, that if we have any of those kind of Ukrainian women, so all of the private hospitals will be open to any Ukrainian woman. The only thing is with the birth certificates, there is a bit of Polish bureaucracy is a bit challenging. So they suggested that before the actual childbirth, if the father could go to obviously the assigned Polish registry office and then declare that they are the father, there's a special declaration they need to fill up. Then after the birth, when the hospital released the report of the child being born, this father will be on a birth certificate.
Great. Okay, I think that's really good information. So, Kasi, what we might do is get you to send us details of the registry office where people can go, and that will then allow the father to be on there and the father's surname to be on the birth certificate as well.
Yes, of course. So the father's and the father name and the surname will be obviously as a on the birth certificate. The only thing also is that obviously because they won't be speaking Polish language, I've actually called the Warsaw registry office yesterday to get some more info about that, and the lady suggested that they will have to hire a sworn translator in this particular language, obviously, so whatever the language father speaks, in order to do that. And after the baby, sorry.
So you're saying the father should hire the translator, or the registry will?
No, the father needs to hire the translator.
Okay.
Yeah, the father needs to hire a translator. Yes, and then after obviously the baby was born, then the Polish law works like this, that it does. Sorry for saying this, but it doesn't matter in the Polish vision that the biological parents, it's the woman who gives the birth. So she will be the one who is actually on the birth certificate along with the assigned father or whoever, the mother is going to put on a birth certificate. I have actually spoke yesterday. Sorry, I've spoke with one of the directors from this Katowice hospital. He was away on a vacation, but he said that he's willing to have a chat with me in details tonight, Australian time, which is morning Polish time, and then I can maybe ask them if they can assist in this process of the birth certificate, where the mother, the actual biological mother. But obviously, I can't confirm that. I need to speak with him. If they can go along with this, and how can we do that? But
great. Kasi, can you tell us how far in advance can you go there to register as a father? Can it be before the birth?
Yes, so you can. I think there's some time frame. I need to have a look again, but they can definitely go before the birth, and I think the birth needs to be also registered 20 days, not longer than 21 days post birth as well. Okay,
great. I've had a question from Fiona saying, haven't we already paid the agency for the birth already? Wouldn't they be just transferred as part of the agency fee? So what most agencies have said is if you decide to take your surrogate outside Ukraine, we cannot cover birth costs because we can arrange birth costs at a Ukraine hospital, but not somewhere else. So your contract is null and void if you decide to take your surrogate out. Now that may differ on an agency basis, but that's the current information we have. Okay, if the surrogate's left of her own accord, yeah, look, you'll have to talk to your agency about these issues. We will let you know where the father goes to register. We'll get those details from Kasia and our team in the next day or so, and we'll send around we'll put it on a blog, okay, because that's going to be important for lots of people. Look, there's other issues that are coming out of this about what happens then in terms of once you have a birth certificate that's Polish, how you can get citizenship and passports for your child. Now, countries like the UK and Australia do not care where the child was born, and they don't care what the birth certificate says. They want to make sure that there's a DNA connection between the child and the parent. So there will be a mandatory DNA test done, and at the moment that test kit needs to be, the test needs to be performed in Warsaw or in Chisinau in Moldova or in Romania. The test kit is then sent back to Australia. The results are then sent back to Europe. So it will take some time to get that done. We are trying to negotiate with governments to speed that process up. So you will need to, because your child will be stateless, they won't have any passport, they cannot move out of Poland or out of Moldova or wherever you are until you have an emergency travel document. And as I said, this could take some time. An emergency travel document is a document that allows limited movement just to a few countries that recognize that. It's not a kind of document you can use to travel to many places at all. You need to wait until you have an emergency passport to travel significant distances. Someone's asked me, why can't you do the DNA test in Poland? That's just the way the Australian government has got it running right now and has for years now. They don't trust the Polish labs to do it correctly. We are trying to push them on that to change the process. Someone's asked me, do we have guidance on births in Romania? No, we don't yet have guidance for Romania. That's on our list to do as well. So look, I hope this has been helpful. As this is a process is changing every day and every week, and different governments are putting in different processes. Unfortunately, many of you come from countries where surrogacy is not recognised or approved on, and so your governments are slow to respond or not responding at all. And that's really why we are having to step in and provide some interim measures. So if you do need support, then you can email heather@growingfamilies.org. If you do have a birth coming up and you're not on our list, you need to register on our list so we know where your baby is going to be born, because resource planning in the current environment is really crucial. As Nicole said before, the situation could deteriorate in certain parts of Ukraine quite quickly, and we might need to make different arrangements from those that your agency or your surrogate has in place right now. The clinics at the start that we listed as helping ship embryos out. So as I said, we've only really got Intersono, who's got a clear process right now for shipping out. We've communicated that with us. In terms of the Biotech Comp clients, if they're not responding to you, they have asked us to act on their behalf and to push the cases through us as a central point. So come to us and we will try and do your cases through our channels, because they are a bit overwhelmed right now. They have too many clients and not enough staff. Those of you who are at very small agencies who've got no contingency planning at all, we can try and help you. We can actually send you a list of documents you need. We can provide, in an emergency, Ukraine translators to talk to your surrogate or the hospital on the phone. We'll all please come up with a birth plan. If they won't, the clinics are doing this day by day. Some surrogates will be delivering their babies close to their hometowns, wherever they are. They won't be able to come to Kiev to deliver the baby. Kiev is probably going to be closed off very soon. So please bear that in mind. Where your birth will take place could well change in the coming weeks. And we'll just need to make sure we can try and get documentation from that birth hospital. As I said, Nicole, has got access to some Ukraine-speaking people. So we are able to do that on an emergency basis. We don't really want to get involved until we have a birth coming up, because we have such a emergency caseload right now. Look, I hope that's handy for you. I know this is a really stressful time for everybody. We are doing all we can to help, but please make sure you've registered your details with us. If you're going to be anywhere near London in a week and a half, come along there to hear more about the shipping issues that you got, and about arrangements in other countries, and talk to some of the lawyers as well. We will send you out a list of the hospitals in Poland which are providing services. We're collating that list today, and we'll give you contact details for our team who can organise the bookings for your surrogates for those hospitals too. If you are getting a response from your agencies about whether they will cover costs, then that's great. But as I said, most will not cover costs of out-of-country births. Those costs, though, are not significant. They're not huge costs. And in the current environment, I think they're going to be needed. Okay. I have got a question coming in saying, can the DNA for Australian parents be sent to London rather than Australia? At the moment, no. We are trying to get in contact with the Home Affairs, but Home Affairs in Australia are hopeless in terms of responding to inquiries about these kind of overarching issues. We're trying to get meetings with the government about this one, but it's really hard. At the moment, all those test kits have to come back to Australia, and that's really because there is no birth certificate that is required. Okay, look, I can see a lot of you have got questions still coming in. If you haven't got news of your surrogate and they were supposed to be implanted, then some of these embryo transfers did happen just before the war started. So we are getting news of surrogates who are newly pregnant. We are keeping a running list of those surrogates and supporting those parents as much as we can. You need to make sure, as a final message, that you do respect the needs of your surrogate. There are some agencies who are saying, oh, look, just move your surrogate to somewhere like Georgia. That's not a simple equation. Georgia does have legal surrogacy programs, but it can be very unethical, unfair to move your surrogate and her children to a country she knows nothing about. Also, in Georgia, the agencies won't recognise surrogacy arrangements unless they have an apostilled surrogacy contract. And getting an apostilled contract is quite hard now in the Ukraine environment. If you're UK citizens, then you could inquire with the UK government in terms of how they're doing the process for bringing your babies home. The UK did put in a much faster process during the COVID crisis in terms of getting their citizens home, so please reach out to them about that. For a UK citizen, you don't need to have, if your surrogate was single, you don't need to have grant UK citizenship to the child. That is automatic, but there does need to be a travel document issued. For a travel document to be issued, we do need to know who is bringing the baby out of the country, and that can be hard. Okay, look, that's all we have time for now. I hope it's helpful. We'll send the recordings out to people who missed the recordings, or most of it. And please be in touch if you need advice. We look forward to seeing you at events we're running in the months ahead. Okay, good luck everybody. I hope it all goes well.